Hello, kia ora. I've been told it's 4 o'clock, so time to start. And I've also been told that it was just afternoon tea, so hopefully you're all awake from coffee. Welcome. Thank you for coming along to this talk on the next chapter in game making for Wētā Workshop. I was going to say, if you're not intending to be in this talk, now is the time to scoot, but it's right there, so you've had your chance. You're stuck with it. Right, what to expect? Expect the story of a studio that went from making games on bleeding edge technology. We went through a near fatal series of events around 2020. No prizes there for what may have happened, but we rose again, and now we are making games that hopefully all of you will play in the near future. I might preempt this, or I might just ask, how many people in the audience heard the announcement a couple of days ago about Wētā Workshop's partnership? All right, so about half. If you haven't heard, don't look it up, because it'll be a great reveal at the end. If you have heard, unfortunately I can't give many more details. I can't give any more details really, other than what was in that press release. So if you're hoping for more detail than what's there, you won't get it, but you will get some interesting information about how we got to that point. A little bit about me. I came from a background in augmented and virtual reality. I started working in tech startups. I began life as a junior programmer working on an augmented reality startup visualizing underground assets. I went on to co-found a startup making geospatial augmented reality games for kids. And I moved to Wētā in 2018. So I was actually hired as a software engineer with Magic Leap when Magic Leap and Wētā Workshop were still making games together. I then built the current programming team from 2 to 8. I've now handed that off earlier this year when I stepped into the head of interactive role. So I'm now sort of stumbling my way through running the studio. Yes, and actually there was one other thing that I wanted to say. While I've been here at Wētā Workshop since 2018, the story that I'm telling is one which I wasn't always around for. It's the story of others. It's a story of incredible things that other amazing people did, and I'm really just here to claim the glory at the end. So about Wētā Workshop. Wētā Workshop brings imaginary worlds to life. We deliver concept design, physical effects, collectibles, immersive visitor experiences and games to the world's entertainment and creative industries. We are best known for screen work on Lord of the Rings, Avatar, Dune, immersive visitor experiences like Gallipoli, which is downstairs, so if you haven't checked that out ever before, I highly recommend checking that out. Established by Richard Taylor, Tanya Roger in 1987. And we're home to a tight-knit creative crew. We have a comprehensive range of creative departments across multiple disciplines. What we are not is Wētā Effects or Wētā Digi. I know it's confusing. We make games, we're digital, therefore we have somewhat of a perception of affinity with Wētā Digi, but we are Wētā Workshop, very much Wētā Workshop. Right, I've got a video. I was tossing up whether to play this or not for you. I think I will play it because, as I said, it's after afternoon tea, and this is, hopefully will wake you all up and bring a bit of excitement and life to the afternoon. So enjoy. Maybe. No. Oh, come on. All right. Come on. There we go. So we make cool stuff. You would have seen elements from all of the divisions there: manufacturing, consumer products, tourism, location-based experiences, and design. Design being concept design and art rather than game design. One thing I just kind of want to shout out to our design studio. Our design studio has been around for a long time, and they do some really incredible design work for a lot of amazing games that you absolutely would have heard about and that I absolutely cannot talk about, except for this one. So to give you an idea of the caliber of concept art that our design studio works on, and our design studio is completely separate to the interactive game development studio. They are a concept design studio, and they're absolutely mind-blowing, the art that comes out of that group of people. So when we talk about games at Wētā Workshop, we focus on kind of interactive, but hopefully more in the future we'll be able to talk much more about the incredible things that the design studio has also done. But I'm here to talk about the interactive division. So the interactive division got its start when we teamed up with the American tech company Magic Leap. For a company that has creativity in its DNA, games are really a natural addition to the experiences of film and entertainment. So Interactive began when Magic Leap CEO Roni Abovitz called Richard Taylor to discuss our world-building experience. Roni then heard about Greg Broadmoor's World of Dr. Grodbort. Roni told Greg that he should make the world real, so that the characters inhabited the same world we did. And how would we do that? Through some AR spatial computing that he was developing, of course. So Greg went and gathered a team of creative developers, which became Wētā Workshop's interactive division. And at its peak, we had 55 people. So it was a significant studio. The goal was to develop a game for the Magic Leap 1 on release, and the catch was that the hardware was being developed at the same time, so that was always a tricky challenge for the team. But they did it. Of course they did it. It's history, so you know they did it. In 2018, the headset was launched, Dr. Grodbort was on it, and it was received incredibly well. It was an incredible experience for all of the few thousand people who got to experience it. Won a bunch of awards. You can see me there collecting an award on behalf of a game I did no work on, but I was there for the celebrations at the end, and to celebrate and congratulate all of the incredible people who did do the hard work. It was around 6 years that was spent working on that game. There are a number of really amazing talks out there on the development of Dr. Grodbort, and it's still highly relevant, so I encourage you to go out and have a look at them if you are of a mind to do so. And the next couple of years that followed that were pretty good times. So we expanded on the Dr. Grodbort's world. Born from a game jam, Boosters, the little rocket that you see there, was an experience that was a lot of fun to work on. There was a game jam, and I think we ended up prototyping around 6 of the ideas that came out of that, and Boosters was the one that was chosen to go through to completion, so we worked on that. We made Grodd Battle, which was a multiplayer experience showcased at GDC, and we also worked on, again, what I've called here unreleased Title A and in development Titles B and C, which I cannot talk about because they were never released, but a hell of a lot of work went into making them, and they were incredible experiences. That's a real shame nobody was ever able to play. But not only this, we started in very small amounts expanding beyond the Magic Leap world and beyond the work of Dr. Grodbort's. We started looking at helping out on some LBE work, so the makeup mirrors were one of the projects that we started during this time. What you can see there is a mirror embedded in that smaller mirror that's in the front, and it imitates or it gives the impression of a makeup station and would dress you as you were sort of interacting with it. And we looked at expanding our R&D capabilities. So we kind of wanted to explore what it might look like working on projects that weren't on the Magic Leap, but we were at the very early stages of exploring what that was. And then along came 2020. So COVID impacted the global economy. I mean, you were all there, you experienced 2020, it was a pretty shit time for everyone. And it was no exception at Wētā Workshop. Interactive was able to keep working from home. So at Interactive, we are lucky in the games industry that most of the stuff that we do can be done remotely. So we picked up our stations, we went home, and we tried to continue on with what we were doing. But there were murmurings at the time that Magic Leap was potentially exiting the consumer market. That made us very nervous, but we didn't have any more information at that point in time, so we just kept doing what we were. So we kept working on what we were working on, but as you all know, it's in the past. 2020 turned into that amazing gift that kept on giving for us. The murmurings were true, and while in lockdown, Magic Leap decided to exit the consumer market. That decision went public, and along with that, our collaboration ceased. Our Magic Leap colleagues were laid off, reducing our team to around about 50%, as well as stalling all of the work that we were 95% of the work that we were currently doing at the time. I just want to take a moment to celebrate my Magic Leap colleagues, quite a few of whom are in the audience. They are incredible individuals, and they have gone on to do some amazing things. Tim, sitting here in the audience, has gone on to found a games company and has investment from Supercell to do so, and the vast majority of them went on to form NZXR that was acquired by Niantic earlier this year. So absolutely landed on their feet, that incredible bunch of people. But for those of us who were left behind, we had a bit of work to do. Manufacturing and film products were impacted. Obviously, manufacturing is a very physically demanding role. You need to be on site. You are physically manufacturing things. We're making swords and costumes, and you can't do that without being on site, and you can't take that remote. So during the first lockdown, none of our physical manufacturing operations could run. LBE was so it's location-based experiences. A lot of work of that is done offshore, but they weren't able to travel offshore anymore, and a lot of our team was also stuck overseas and not able to come home. And Wētā Workshop Unleashed. So Wētā Workshop Unleashed was planned and did open in December 2020, but you can imagine when lockdown happened earlier that year and we were planning to open a location-based experience that was planned to be marketed internationally and the borders were all closed. It was a relatively nerve-wracking time. We knew we had this amazing product, but we weren't sure who we'd have to show it to. So at Interactive, with Magic Leap gone, we had a very slim pipeline of work remaining. Like I said, we'd started looking for work outside of Magic Leap, but it was probably only 5% of what we were doing. Because of this, we were forced to downsize crew, and we were forced to all reduce our hours. So none of us were on full-time hours for a number of months. I just want to take another moment at this point to acknowledge all of the team that we lost at that time who weren't with Magic Leap. They are all amazing and talented and wonderful people as well, and they have all, of course, landed on their feet, but that doesn't change the fact that an unexpected and unwelcome challenge was thrust upon them, and I'm sure many of you as well at that time. What we did have, and what we continue to have, is the unwavering support from Wētā Workshop. The wider workshop to continue on. They saw the potential. They had this unwavering belief in the collective creativity and talents of the team. I think one of the biggest attributes that Wētā Workshop has as a company is that we are diverse. So you saw all of those divisions that we have, you saw all of those different things that we're involved in doing. What that means is that gives us a huge amount of stability. So the risk is spread, essentially. It's spread across a number of divisions, and while some of those were impacted by COVID quite heavily, others weren't impacted as much. So for example, consumer products sells models, polystone figurines and acrylic models, and while business was booming, people were spending more online, their production pipeline was impacted because of course those things need to be manufactured. So every division had its own challenges and sort of balanced out in the long run. But that's also a big part of why they wanted to support us. As a games division, we provide something quite different to what the rest of the workshop does. It's still got a lot of crossover with the creativity, but it's a very different market, and it's got very different dependencies. So for a start, we did odd jobs to keep bringing in revenue and opportunity. We continued to work for Unleashed, that makeup mirror I showed you earlier. This is Jeff here. Jeff is an animatronic that welcomes you into Unleashed, and one of our team did the animations for Jeff. One of our engineers, James, made a skull that mimics your facial expressions, and that also went into Unleashed. We completed a project called Raised Up Sky, which was actually an augmented reality experience on the Magic Leap. We developed a point cloud system that displayed some artwork for an artist called Joseph Michael, and you can look that up online if you're interested. But we knew that we wanted to make games, so all of these things were only ever stopgap measures to get us to where we wanted to be, which was to make games. And we never lost sight of that goal. So what we did do is we had a couple of game jams. We had a couple of lockdown game jams. We built several internal prototypes, and one of those we ended up working on quite a lot. So I'd like to showcase that to you now. It's a piece of work that I can share with you. It's not under any kind of NDAs, so I'm excited to be able to share a little bit of the work that we did do during this time. So this game went through 3 iterations. It came out of the, oh gosh, look at that formatting. It says layers. It should say layers. Our art director Steve looked at these slides and he will not be impressed that this is slipped through. But yeah, anyway, so it came out as layers. It evolved to something called Second Nature, and then it evolved to the last Kauri. I'm going to start by showcasing Second Nature. So Layers was basically a paper prototype. When we prototyped it into an actual game prototype, it had developed by that stage to Second Nature. So we'll just start there. So some of the character concept art for Second Nature. It started out as an exploration and celebration of New Zealand native environments. You can probably tell by some of those animals there. Where you travel as Denise. Denise was a Kiwi, and Denise and her friends were travelling through numerous environments, encountering various new introduced species and helping her and other native wildlife to deal with the challenges that they presented. And while at first it kind of seems like a struggle between introduced and native species, it was really an exploration. It was really not an exploration of good versus evil, but just rather the various struggles that we all go through in our diverse lives and challenges that we face. So this is some of the landscape concept art, inspired by the diverse and beautiful native flora and fauna of Aotearoa. It was a side-scrolling puzzle game that was split into 3 layers, and hence the sort of working title layers, but you'd have your air layer, your ground layer, and your water layer, and you'd need to flip between the 3 of those in order to solve puzzles and progress in the game. So not quite. And then we had the idea of this stamp book type collection, where you would fill out your stamp book based on the different creatures that you encountered and helped on your way. So I've got a little gameplay video to show what what Second Nature ended up looking like by the time we had finished with it. Yes, that's the laser on the kiwi. So we completed the prototype. We had a hell of a lot of fun making it, and it really kept our spirits up in this time where we were quite uncertain about our future. We had so much fun, we ended up deciding that we would like to try and pursue it as a project, but we needed to find funding. We ended up submitting it for quite a few different kinds of funding. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head now which funding grants we went to, but we were unsuccessful in all of them. So unfortunately, we needed to put that project aside and look for other avenues to pursue. At this time, bringing in revenue really was quite a high priority for us. We were not a cheap studio to run, and while we were very focused on making games, you can't just keep making games forever without having a source of revenue to go alongside it. However, a few months later, the Interactive Development Fund was coming up, so it was a much smaller piece of funding than previous funding we had gone after, but we wanted to see if we could give it another go or give it another shot. So we took the idea of Second Nature and we downscaled it. We downscaled it quite significantly. It was much more modest funding, and we wanted to evolve Second Nature to something more simple and accessible. So we revised the idea of Second Nature, suggested a plot twist, which ended up being a major rewrite of both the narrative and the mechanics, involving a title change to the last kauri and a significant downscope. We switched from 3D to 2D and from mobile to PC. So The Last Kauri is an interactive narrative-driven game that aims to bring local storytelling and the exploration of environmental challenges. We kept that at the core of it. But in this instance, players followed the journey of the last remaining kauri cone after kauri dieback has decimated the population. A fortuitous encounter with a lone Kiwi sparks a companionship and a quest to transport kauri to a safe new home. The game features, again, a diverse cast of creatures based on local flora and fauna and a fantastical interpretation of our native bush. So you can see the concept art has changed quite drastically. We actually got the design studio involved in this. So at the time that we needed to go for this funding, our studio and the artists in our studio were busy on other projects. So we reached out to design and asked if they had anyone interested in helping out, and they did. You can see some of the early landscape concepts and the exploration of colour, some exploration of night and day there as well. And some early prototypes of some of the native birds of New Zealand. So I've got a very small gameplay demo to showcase for this. It's something that I asked our designer to whip up really quickly, and it shows a very different level of polish to the first one, but it also shows the evolution of a game, which I think is really interesting. So in order to reach different areas, the little kauri can go places that Kiwi is too bulky to fit into. Here's the and there we go. So it's a very basic snippet of gameplay. You just need to get a berry to complete the objective and receive your feather. Well, you can see that was all born from one idea, and all the different kinds of iterations and styles that can come out. And like I said, we were actually successful in getting funding to produce this prototype. So, sometimes your ideas don't need to be as big and grand as they can be in order to be successful. During this time, I mentioned that we had game jams, and there's quite a lot of other prototypes and other concepts that came out of those game jams, and hopefully those will be the subject of another talk another time. I think those are ones we'll keep in our pocket for now. Oh, come on, formatting. We just want to make games. So, every game jam that we've ever done, whether it was the one that produced boosters or the ones that produced The Last Kauri, we knew that we wanted to make games. And I think that game jams are such a crucial part of the life of a studio, to explore the creativity and to get out of the cycle of sprints or whatever it is that you happen to be doing. It's just, they always bring out great ideas and they always renew energy. So towards the end of 2020, we had several ideas and prototypes, we were working on a few projects, but we really did need that one big vision that we were going to be able to move forward on. And as Wētā Workshop, we knew that we had one advantage that not many studios have, and that is our connection to a bunch of really amazing IP. Ultimately, the strength of the IP that we have access to outweighed the allure of creating something ourselves from scratch, although, you know, I don't know if it's every game developer's dream, but it feels like it was always ours to create our own IP, and one day, hopefully, we will do that. But we were also really, really excited to work with some IP that Wētā had relationships with. It's less risky when you go to release. Obviously, having the strength of an IP behind you is a helpful thing in marketing. You work within the constraints of an existing world, so there's slightly less work to do, even if the standard to which you need to represent that world is extraordinarily high. And like I said, there was just huge excitement in the studio. This is what we wanted to do. So we crafted a game pitch which we felt was perfect for the IP that we wanted to go after as a studio. It's unlike any other game that's been made in this world before. It's quite different, and we felt that we were the studio to carry this to completion if any studio was. And we took that idea to the IP holders, so we needed to get their blessing, and we did. It was relatively painless. The idea was a hit. And they were on board. So with the IP on board, all that was left for us was to figure out the funding. Wētā was not in a position to fund the full production of the game, and so we needed to figure out how we were going to do that. Now that the IP was on board, we were buoyed, confident in finding someone who would think this was a good enough idea to finance. But as a studio who had gone through significant downsizing and who had never produced a game of this type before, we knew that the best way to sell the game was to show what we could do rather than just pitch it with a PowerPoint. So we committed to self-funding the production of a game demo, which we could use to help strengthen the pitch itself. A demo is a much larger and longer endeavour than creating a pitch document. So while us devs were making the demo, the production team crafted a pitch and they started taking that out to potential funding partners. The goal was to use the pitch to get people interested enough to sign up to receive the demo, thus holding us to account on a demo delivery time. So we spent about 3 months creating the demo and lining up as many publishers as we could. You might think that we were able to use our connections to find publishers that would want to work with us, but we didn't. Our production team basically Googled AA publishers, something along those lines, and it was a matter of cold calling, using the publisher application portals, hitting people up on LinkedIn. We worked with a broker who tried to help us with some connections. One of the things, so I wasn't myself involved in the pitching, I was still developing at that time, but one of the insights that we had was often you wouldn't hear back if you just completed the funding through an application portal. Despite being Wētā Workshop, despite having the IP on board, we just wouldn't hear back. And so we were actually going out and cold messaging people on LinkedIn and saying, hey, we've applied through your portal, can you please take a look? And that would often prompt a conversation. We ended up hearing back from almost all. Like I said, some never got back to us, even through LinkedIn or whatever mechanism we tried contacting them. There are just some people who never got back. I think we could do about that. Our pitching strategy. Standout observations from our pitching strategy. People knew Workshop, but they knew us for film, not for games. We brought the IP along with us. We reminded them that we had actually worked on a game as a game dev team for quite a long time, but that wasn't very well known at the time, and it certainly wasn't an obvious point when we were pitching. We highlighted our strengths, which were the individual contributors on our team. So we had a few people who had worked on some really recognisable titles, and that sort of immediately builds rapport if you if you have that to work with. We unashamedly name dropped where we could. So again, having people with recognisable credits really sort of helps to build that connection. And we iterated on the pitch. So by the time we pitched to the publisher that we ended up going into an agreement with, we had iterated on our pitch 9 times, and I think we pitched to about 20 publishers. So, every two publishers, the pitch was being updated. Don't assume that you necessarily know exactly how the pitch should go. There were things that were very specific to our particular pitch that publishers wanted to know and that we had to change and shift. We also used this as an opportunity to refine our ideas, and for example, one of the major things that shifted during our pitching was we changed the platform on which the game was going to be released. So that's a pretty major decision, and that is something that was decided through feedback that we received in those pitching sessions. It's the very earliest user testing you'll do, and these are industry experts as well. These are people who see games all over the place, so they'll give you some good feedback. We ended up having conversations with a number of partners about differing funding models. So some were only interested in investing in the company or the studio, not on funding individual games, and some were only interested in funding multiple game deals, which we weren't really too keen on. We just wanted to get this one out the door. One day, I hope we will be able to share our early demo with you because it's really cool and really fun. But for now, all I can say is that the team were really happy with what we delivered, although it was far from perfect and never often is. In April, we sent the demo out to 13 publishers who had registered their interest. So I think in the next slide I say, so we had about 20 publishers that we were talking to. 13 of those said that they were interested in receiving the demo, so 7 of them weren't interested. From those 13, there were around about 5 who were realistic prospects, and from 5, obviously, we found the one that we wanted to sign with. It took 8 months. It took 8 months from the first contact with our publisher to sign the deal, and there were no red flags. That is literally just the time that it took. It was a little bit more complex because we had the IP involved. So it was a tripartite agreement. There was contracts that needed to happen between all 3 parties, and that did extend the time that it took to get a deal. But it was not due to any lack of will. Everybody wanted to make this work. So it's just something to be aware of. It takes time. It took us time. And if you know, you know. So we have joined with Private Division to develop the next game in our interactive story. Private Division really were perfect for us from the start. They are a part of a bigger group, so Take-Two is their parent company, but they are a smaller entity in that, so it's very similar to how Interactive is a smaller entity of Wētā Workshop, and we had that affinity with the Private Division team very early on. Throughout contract negotiations, we set the foundations for a really wonderful partnership. We got to know the Private Division team, we got to know their families, their stories, and other incredible projects that they were working on. So Take-Two, Private Division's parent company, you may have heard of them, but if not, you will have heard of one of Take-Two's other subsidiaries. So they own Zynga, they own Rockstar Games, which is the Red Dead Redemption franchise and Grand Theft Auto 5, and they own 2K, which is Borderlands and Civilization, and a whole bunch of sports games. Private Division are the sort of more indie-focused arm of Take-Two. They're a dedicated and highly experienced team based in New York, Seattle, Munich, and Singapore. And they're united through their passion for games and commitment to supporting the best studios and creating titles of the highest quality. These are some of the games that Private Division has published. You may or may not have heard of them. So the Kerbal Space Program franchise, which is now owned by Private Division, Ancestors, Outer Worlds, Disintegration, Hades, Oli World, and recently Rollerdrome, which was just released by Roll7, who are the creators of Oli World. working with them has been an absolute joy. So, if you have the freedom to choose the publisher that you want to go with, choosing one that has the same values that you do is hugely important. It just sets the ground for a really great relationship. When things haven't been working out, we've been able to talk to them about it, and they've been able to come to the table with solutions. We've been able to work through it. It really just is a true partnership, and our strength is in creative development. It's not in marketing, it's not in games publishing. So having someone alongside us who can carry the weight of all of that part of game development, which is a huge part of it, but is something that we would have had to invest huge amounts of money into, and something that we are not experts in. So it would have been really risky for us to take on self-publishing. One of the things that Patrick and Phil, they were the two who were sort of at the company at the time looking after the pitching and the publisher relationships. One of the things that they said is, look for publishers who you would hire. Look for publishers as if you were hiring them to be on your team, and then you will find people who you really want to work with long term. And that's what we ended up doing, which was incredible. And the IP, I didn't mention the IP. Lord of the Rings. So we're making a game set in Middle-earth. It's extremely exciting. I think as the most recognised IP that Wētā has worked on, it was the most obvious choice, but it was also absolutely the most exciting choice for us as enthusiasts, as fans, as people who have been living in Tolkien's world for so long. We're really nervous about making a world and making a game set in this world, but we are incredibly excited, and we have amazing, passionate people who are doing it justice for sure. So I don't think anyone is necessarily surprised to see that Lord of the Rings is the IP that we will be working with. And the license that we have, so the license we have is based on the books. So when you think about this game, don't necessarily think about the films, because we will be sticking very much to the literary license and interpretation of Tolkien's original worlds. I can't say much. Like I said, I can't say much. What I can say, and what we did say in the release, and so what I will emphasise here, is that this is a game that is unlike any other Lord of the Rings game you may have played in the past. So I wouldn't look at any other Lord of the Rings game that has ever come out and think that this will be similar, because it will not. We're aiming to release in Private Division's financial year 24, but we do not yet have a launch date. We have come a bit of a windy path to get here, as you've seen, but we were always focused on retaining our core as game developers, and we have done that. So the next chapter is we're a game studio. We're now a fully funded game studio with a pipeline that goes into the future that's incredibly exciting. We'll be here for a long time. This is a small, I don't know what happened to our team on the day this photo was taken, but that's probably about half of us. A massive shout out to the team. Like I said, I'm the one here who's telling the story to you today because I'm the one here at this point in time. But this is the story and the adventure of a bunch of people, a bunch of extremely incredible people, and we all lived it. We all lived this adventure, and we're all still living it. The partnership with Private Division is the start. It really is the start of an amazing new journey for Wētā Workshop, one where we make and own our own game. So we own this game, and we will grow to build many more experiences for the world to explore. And that's it. I have no idea how long that took. I think we've probably, 4:41, which means, do we have 10 minutes for any questions, which I can't answer? If you have any questions, please ask them. If you want to come and talk to me at any point. I think I was going to say something at the start of the talk about, I hope you've been catching up with old acquaintances and meeting new ones, as cliche as it is. But if you do want to make a new acquaintance, I am always happy to have a chat and meet new people. So if you see me around, don't be afraid to say hi and introduce yourself. I mean, yeah, I can discuss it for sure. So the question was, at one point, some of the publishers were interested in doing multi-game deals and discussing the decision process around that. Really, for us, it was, I believe the type of deals that they wanted were quite tight time constraints. So I couldn't tell you exactly what the time constraints were, but it would have been something along the lines of 3 games in 6 years, or 3 games in a certain amount of time. I'm pretty sure it was 3 games, and we really just wanted to make this one game. So we weren't. If at all possible, we just didn't want to be constrained and locked in to something like that where we didn't have 3 games that we were sure that we wanted to make. I think had we had 3 prototypes and 3 games we absolutely wanted to make, then maybe it would have been different. But we really just wanted to make this one at that point in time. Yeah. Yes?
Why the continued extreme secrecy after the Magic Leap era?
Extreme secrecy after the... secrecy on which part? On what we're working on?
Yeah. It's working in the Magic Leap era. I associated it with Magic Leap in particular.
Oh, right.
It seems that it's continued.
Yeah, okay, so why the extreme secrecy despite Magic Leap not being around anymore? And so the secrecy around Magic Leap was the fact that the hardware hadn't been released, right? So there was a lot of secrecy and a lot of proprietary information around that headset before it got released that Magic Leap were very conscious not to leak. Why the secrecy now? I guess down to marketing. Yeah. Marketing. So there's a marketing plan, obviously, for every game. There's a marketing plan, and there's a time that you want to release details, and now is not the time for us. Yes.
What's it like working with one of the world's most beloved and famous IPs?
What's it like working with one of the world's most beloved and famous IPs? It is terrifying. I think one of the things that I have said to the team is that we're going to need to get some training to deal with the feedback that happens when we release, because we will never please all of the fans. It's exciting. You accept that you will not please everyone, but we also know that we are absolutely doing justice to it. So as long as, so we have a unwavering and fundamental faith in ourselves to know that we are doing right by the IP and we are making something we are incredibly proud of. So we hold on to that. Yep. Yes?
So you mentioned that you use some brokers or agents to search for a publisher.
Yes.
How effective were they? Like, did any of their leads end up being defined?
Yeah, so the question was, were the brokers much use, and did we end up using any of the publishers they introduced us to as the final 5? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know, because I wasn't the one involved in the conversations, but the private division did not come through a broker. Yeah. But that's the kind of information I could probably get. All right, I think that looks like it. But if you do have any questions, like I said, if you see me around, come and grab me. I'll be at the after party tomorrow. I'll be here all day tomorrow. Thank you.